Hey guys, welcome back to the next part of our series. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most hated parts of the 3D production pipeline, and that is retopology. Now, in the later years, we've had several new advances in the technologies and in the softwares that have allowed us to have a nicer or more or a smoother process in regards to the topology. So we're going to be talking about some of that stuff right now. First of all, this is what we have right now for our character. To refine a lot of the shape changes here and there. Let me just show her arms. There we go. We're ready to jump into the retopology process, and we're going to be talking a lot about some of the stuff that's important for us as game character artists to make sure that our character pretty much has everything. Okay, now before I do a little bit of a dissection here, I want to jump into Maya right here, and I want to show you guys a very important thing that you need to take into consideration. From this point on, we're going to be dealing with a lot of files. We're going to have decimated meshes, we're going to have retopologized low polys, we're going to have low polys with UVs, low polys without UVs. Like, there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. So I strongly recommend you keep everything in order. Now, one of the ways you can do that is by using the project settings and the project window here in Maya. So I'm just going to call this Freya Victory 3D. Now, you might have noticed in a couple of my past videos, I've been using a folder here where all my work is right now. I'm gonna set the folder right there, and everything's gonna be as default. Now, I personally like to have, let me show you, everything that has to do with this process, the retopology process and everything, in the assets folder, because I find it's easier to get there. Now I'm gonna have different folders here. One of them is gonna be decimated meshes. Another one's gonna be high polys. Another one's gonna be low polys. Now, some of you might ask, why do you have things in different folders? Mainly for organization purposes. Like, I just want to make sure that nothing gets lost in translation and that I have everything that I need pretty much there for me. Now, let's start with the dissection of our character. Before you jump into the retopology process, you need to ask yourself, what parts of my character are going to be a single mesh and what parts of my character are going to be multiple meshes? And that's something that we call watertight. If you have a mesh that pretty much is enclosed in the same mesh, like there's no holes, no what's the word, thin faces or anything, everything is just one whole mesh, that's what we call a watertight character. And we also have characters with overlapping pieces of geometry. Now, which one is better? It depends on the type of project, but for us, we're gonna have a couple of intersecting stuff and a couple of non-intersecting stuff. In my case, one of the things that I want to have in the same mesh, it's gonna be the body, the head, and the belt. There we go. So this is going to be a watertight mesh. That way, it's going to be very easy for my riggers to make sure that everything is together. Now, I'm not going to worry about this line here because we're going to stitch this line with my necklace right here. If I see the need to have my necklace in the same piece, which I think might be the best idea right now, I will do that. We're just missing a couple of add-ons here for our necklace. That's fine. We're going to work with them later on. But that thing is going to be pretty much like, it's not going to be jumping around. It's going to be encrusted in the or attached to the necklace. So that's not a big deal. So therefore, I will make sure, or I will actually keep it like this. Now, before we decimate everything, we need to make sure that the silhouette of our character is reading nicely. So you need to go to all these little places here and there to make sure that everything is nice and smooth. Now, see this that I'm doing right there? I'm pushing this so that there are no holes in the geometry. That's very important because holes or negative spaces in regards to overlapping geometry can make things very, very difficult in the retopology process. And even though you can do it, you just need to go in there and bend stuff. It's not really recommended because, again, it gets really, really tricky. So all of these areas where there's not a very definitive border, I'm just gonna push them slightly out. So there's enough of a lip, like a border, that we can follow and work with our retopology. There we go. Now, before I export this and decimate this, there's one more thing I want to do, and this is very, very important. I need to open her mouth. Why? Because when we do the bakes, one of the things that's going to happen is that if the mouth is closed like this, we're going to lose a lot of the detail from this, actually the detail from the top lip will be projected into the detail of the lower lip. Now, if you remember, we went back and fixed a little bit of the topology. Unfortunately, we got a couple of errors here and there. So I will retopologize the head and then bring it back and add all the nice little high frequency detail that we will need for our head. Yeah, so let's open it. Very easy way to do it. We're just gonna go into the lowest subdivision, change my select rect into select lasso, and select all the lower lip, like so. Invert selection, and start getting rid of all the extra faces here. Try to follow like a straight line from the corner of the mouth into the inner side of the lips. I'm gonna isolate this. I'm gonna just use dynamic isolation. Oop. And let's get rid of all of this stuff. Now, don't worry about that. We got rid of a lot of important stuff. That's fine. Just invert, and it's easier to select those faces in this area right here. Actually, we do want those lower lip kind of thing. Let's just find the best possible angle. Sorry if I'm making you guys dizzy. Just find the best possible angle and try to capture those faces. It's very important to try to capture all of the faces, because the cleaner the selection, the easier it's going to be. I'm going to go back into the other isolated piece of mesh here, and I'm going to go into my options. Options down here into visibility and say grow. I'm going to grow it a little bit so that I can capture the lower lip properly, and then I'm just going to get rid of them again. There we go. As close as possible. Like all of these faces. Let's go away. It's fine if the selection is not perfect, but the best, or the closer you can get, the easier it's gonna be for you guys. So I think that's gonna be good. Oh, let's invert this. I'm gonna say group visible right here, mask, and soften the mask. Go up one division, soften the mask, go up one division, soften the mask. And then I'm gonna move my pivot point to the unmask center, which should be around the jaw line right here. And then just slightly open the mouth. That's gonna be more than enough. As soon as you get to see both roofs of the corners of the mouth, you're gonna be good. So that for us works perfectly. Now we can always come back here and use like our Debian standard to resculpt a couple of areas that can be problematic. However, I'm not getting too worried, because I know that I'm going to be retopologizing this, and then I can come back into ZBrush and do some final touch-ups to the head. So that's going to be fine for us. The only thing I'm worried about is the teeth. So I'm just going to turn them on, and I just need to make sure that they look as nice as possible. Remember when we were trying to get them to work, one of the issues we were having was either they were too small, too big, not in the correct position. So just check your reference, and even if it's not perfect, that's fine. We still have time to fix them later on in Maya. One of the issues here is that the teeth are closed and her mouth is open. So one thing we can do is go into the teeth. And if you remember, we should have had them. Oh, no, we didn't. I thought we had them into like a subdivision level, but apparently not. So, so yeah, we'll just leave them like that for the moment. Let's go back into our character. And there we go. Now, without taking the teeth into account, this mesh right here, talking about the head, the necklace, the body, the belt, and the legs are ready. I'm just gonna go into the belt here, for instance, and double check that there's not such a big gap between the belt and the chest. So it's actually gonna help me make her look slightly thinner. So I'm gonna push this in. Go around and check that there's enough of a border everywhere. The border is pretty much just to break silhouette. Push this in. Again, we don't want such a big gap here on the underside of the character, because all of these places that are floating can become problematic when doing a watertight mesh. Same here on the back. Just push them, or push this area right into the skin. Even if it looks slightly wrong, because most of the time not everything is form-fitting, that's fine. For our purposes, it's gonna work. The only thing here, I'm a little bit worried about the curvature now that we lost. Just bring it slightly in, like so. There we go. That works fine. Now I'm gonna bring my head higher in subdivisions, not super high, because this is not the final mesh that we're gonna be exporting for the bakes. This is just the decimation that we want to start working on the project, right? On the topology of the character. There we go, something like that. And now with everything there, pretty much there, I'm just gonna go into merge visible, and I'm gonna get an extra subtool up here, which is quite heavy, 2.2 millions. It's high. It's not super high, but it's quite high. And I'm gonna go into C plugin, decimation master, and I'm gonna hit 250K, because I want everything to be at 250K polygons. So what ZBrush is going to do at this point is going to decimate our character. It's going to analyze the whole thing and triangulate pretty much everything into a less dense mesh, so that we can keep most of the details and still have most of the form as well. Now again, this is going to be our watertight mesh. Everything you're seeing right now will be one single mesh, and that's going to help us for our optimization purposes. So I'm going to just wait for this to finish. It usually doesn't take that long. The longest I've ever had was like a 15-minute decimation process, and it was for a 40 million polygon character. So in this case, we're not that high, so that's fine. Boom, 250K, that's perfect. Now remember, turn off group and export your character. I'm gonna go into my project, the newly created project, assets, and this is decimated. I'm gonna call this Freya body decimated. There we go. So that's our first piece of geometry going out. Now let's go in order. That's body, that's head, this is the base, teeth. Now the teeth are a fun thing. Here's the deal. In regards to the teeth, you're gonna see that if we go all the way down, the topology is perfect. Remember, we got this from a guy that's going to be on the notes as well. This is free of use, so you're totally free to use them in your projects. And this is perfect. We got everything we need here. So I'm not even going to bother about decimating this thing. I'm just going to export as is into my low poly. I'm going to call this Freya teeth. And then I'm going to go a couple of subdivisions higher, like this. Maybe one more. I think that's fine. And export this into my high polys and call this Freya teeth high. There we go. So that's an easy piece of geometry. Now let's keep going down our subtool list. Eyes. I'm not going to worry about the eyes. We're going to rebuild them from scratch in Maya. Hair. Not really important, but if you feel like your hair is very important for you to appreciate your figure, go ahead and export it. I am not going to export it because I'm going to be showing you guys how to do hair cards, and until I do that, we're just going to keep going with topology. Skirt. Now, skirt is a fun part. Here's the deal. If we go low, like at this point, we're at 5.20, so it's like a 5K or a 7K skirt. This is actually a perfect resolution for us. So I'm just going to export this again as is. And this is pretty much our low poly. We don't need to do any retopology to our skirts. I'm just gonna call this Freya skirt. Let's say low, so that's easy to identify. And same thing, we can go a couple of subdivisions higher, and if we want to keep all of those wrinkles nicely. Now this, it would be worth it to decimate, because it's gonna be easier for us to control this kind of mesh. Otherwise it's going to be a little bit too heavy. So I'm just going to clone this tool. I always like to work on clones when I'm doing a decimation. I'm just gonna say, you know what, let's go to one, I think 75K is gonna be good. Again, we're at 3K or 300K, so we don't really have that much detail. All of that little nice cloth pattern that we are looking for, that's gonna be achieved with textures. So I'm just gonna export this, assets, high polys, and this is gonna be Freya skirt high. Now, this is very important. We're gonna talk about this later. Keep your naming conventions in the same or completely similar. If you're using caps or underscores, keep using caps and underscores. Do not change them midway because that messes up a lot of the stuff in scripting. Now, this piece right here, this piece, guys. I've been doing several tests with this piece for the character, and let me tell you that there are different ways that you can address this piece. First of all, we could go and do a what's it called, watertight mesh for all of these pieces here, but it's going to be complicated to get a nice looking border here on the side of the breasts and here on the inner side here. Also, the topology of the body won't really flow in the same way that we want the topology of the dress to flow. The issue here is that we have a little bit of overlap that, up here with the necklace. So what's our solution? We're gonna have two different pieces of meshes, or two meshes, and they're gonna be overlapping each other. However, we want to make sure that our overlap looks as normal or as natural as possible. So for instance, I'm gonna push, I got my intensity way too low. I'm gonna push this line in there. Let me turn off the necklace for a second. Because at this point, for instance here, I know that if I push it there, I'm going to keep my necklace. These kind of gaps, these are the gaps that we're trying to be mindful about. So I'm just going to try to reduce them or get them as close to the body as possible without losing that nice straight lines that we have for the dress. Now it's fine. We're talking about an old dress, so having a little bit of wrinkles here and there, it's totally fine. Yeah, it's okay if we have a little bit of that gap there. Actually, let me bring that back. It's okay if we have that gap because we're gonna have two pieces of meshes here. So we're not gonna be hiding any under or the faces from the other side. The only issue with doing this process or doing it this way is the fact that it's gonna be a little bit more difficult for our riggers to make sure that the weights are properly aligned. However, if you are experienced with, if you're experienced with rigging or have a very good rigger, then that shouldn't really be that big of a deal. Well, let's push this so that we're sure that the necklace is on top of the dress, like so. And now I can go back here into the underside of the breast and move this a little bit out so that we have a little bit of that chest showing. Actually, I believe I came back here and yeah, I added a couple of volumes here. So let's get rid of that. Let's go flat again here on the underside. And that's gonna reveal a little bit of the chest there. So you see it from a very specific angle. You're gonna see like a little bit of the breast there. So that's gonna be kind of sexy, right? Now this piece we're gonna clone. Where's the clone button? Or over here, clone. And this guy, we're gonna export. So we're gonna say C plugin, decimation, and again, if this is at 10% decimation should be good. Remember, we don't have to export this, guys, into the best resolution right now. We only need the overall shape and the main wrinkles and main volumes so that we can capture those and make sure that they're present in the low poly. So 75K, that's perfect. Turn group off, export. High polys, and we're gonna say, how do you call this part of the dress? Let's just call it upper, or again, naming convention. So Freya, upper dress, high. There we go. Going back to our character, going down the list. But yeah, that's it. That's all the pieces, guys. So I'm going to stop the video right here, and in the next video we're going to jump into Maya and start organizing our meshes so that we can easily work with the retopology process. I wish you guys happy sculpting, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.